The savannah had forgotten the sound of rain. For many seasons the sky had been hard and empty. The rivers had thinned into dusty scars across the earth. The grass had turned brittle, whispering under the tired feet of animals that wandered in search of life. And in the middle of that dry land lived a lion. His name was Ari. Once Ari had been the strongest lion in the valley. His roar could shake the hills, and his pride followed him with confidence. But drought changes everything. The prey had disappeared, the wind carried only dust, and the sky was still silent. Day after day Ari climbed the same rocky hill and stared at the empty horizon. He had prayed to God many times before, he had hoped before. But hope had disappointed him. So one evening, as the red sun sank into the earth, Ari whispered to himself, "Dreaming and praying again will only hurt." Yet that same evening, a wise old eagle circled above him and landed on the rock nearby. "Why do you sit here every day, lion?" the eagle asked. "I'm waiting for rain," Ari said quietly. The eagle looked at the sky, empty and silent. "Then why do you look like someone who has already given up?" Ari sighed. "Because God has been silent for too long." The eagle tilted his head and said something strange. "Sometimes God answers after persisting." Then the eagle flew away. The next morning Ari climbed the hill again. He remembered the eagle's words. So Ari bowed his great head and whispered to God again. Nothing happened. The wind blew dust across the valley. Still Ari stood up and looked toward the horizon. "No cloud," he said. He prayed again. On different times and occasions. Still nothing. The land stayed silent. His heart whispered, "See? This is why dreaming and praying hurts." But Ari remembered the eagle's voice. He prayed. The sky stayed empty. Still nothing. The wind carried only dry heat. Even the horizon looked tired. Ari almost walked away. He lowered his head, ready to give up again. But something inside him whispered, "Try once more." So Ari bowed his head. He prayed softly, not loudly like before. Not with force. Just with faith. Then he slowly lifted his eyes and looked toward the far edge of the sky. At first, nothing. But then, a tiny cloud appeared. So small, it looked like a paw print in the sky. Ari stared. His heart began to beat faster. The wind shifted. The little cloud began to grow. Dark clouds rolled across the horizon. Thunder whispered across the hills. The dry earth trembled with anticipation. And suddenly, rain. Heavy, wild, unstoppable rain. The valley drank deeply. The dust turned to rivers. The grass lifted its head again. Ari stood on the hill, water soaking his golden mane, and let out a roar that echoed across the land. Not the roar of power, but the roar of hope restored. Because Ari had learned something. Sometimes the hardest thing a lion can do is not fighting. It is daring to dream and pray again even while it still hurts. Sometimes faith asks us to believe again and again until the cloud appears. And when it does, even the smallest cloud can carry the promise of a storm.